You're all set, and Scott is here also, so I will move him over.
Okay, great. I'll give a second for that and then we'll start. Okay, great. So I want to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen on January 11th, 2022. I want to call it to order, and please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I guess the next order of business is approval of the minutes for December 20th, 2021 and December 20th, 21 special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any amendments, changes? No? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, no abstentions. Minutes pass. Item number 3 is just the first Selectwoman's update. I think, first of all, I want to wish everybody a very happy New Year. And highlight, first of all, today we're in some of the coldest weather that we have experienced this winter. The senior center is open as a warming center. So if there's anybody who's having trouble with their heat and feels they need assistance, please reach out to the senior center. And you can also use that to kind of keep yourself warm and get a relief from the cold weather today. I'll reserve kind of any other comments. I know that we've had a lot going on the last 2 weeks with test kit distributions and masks and things like that. We've invited, we have our emergency management director, Sam DeBura, who's going to be joining us a little bit on the agenda to talk about that process. And we're also just launched another one that will be happening on Wednesday. So I'll reserve that. And then the third thing is later this evening, the Board of Selectmen will be has set up a special meeting to address the 3 public referendums that we're anticipating for February 15th. So if there is any members of the audience wondering why it's not being talked about this morning, it's not that we're not going to talk about it. We just decided it was such a big issue and topic that we wanted to reserve it for a special meeting. So that's scheduled for 6 o'clock tonight via Zoom. And you can find the agenda posted on the town website. And those are really the big things. And then finally, it's just we're continuing to work through the budget, and this board has some workshops planned for later this month. So that will be probably after we get through today's evening discussion. The next big item for the board to be talking about over here for the next couple of weeks is the budget. So that's kind of my update. And with that, I'd like to turn it over for liaison reports and selectmen comments. Anybody have anything?
I'll go first. Happy New Year to everybody, also, and to all of you. For a couple of things, the senior commission has not met since our last meeting, and unfortunately, they have to cancel their meeting tomorrow, this Thursday, also. But one of the things that came up at the last meeting that I never mentioned was the senior daycare, Stronghouse. That's been closed for a while now, and in the last couple months, Yale has bought V&A. So the hope is that Yale will take a look at reopening it or something. And they were saying at the meeting that there is such a need for this, the calls for it and everything, that we really did not have. It's such a great service that was able to be provided. So they're going to keep looking at that. The new president of Yale happens to be the gentleman that really was involved with opening up Stronghouse. So and realizes how important these senior drop-in centers are. So you're hearing more about that. P&Z did meet. I'm sure you read it in the paper, and they did approve with some modifications the affordable housing on Scotland Road, and I know that's being appealed right now. But that's the latest what's going on right there. One of the things I just wanted to add was I had spoken to Peggy about this, just to put it on the record. I am concerned with COVID surge of our February 15th referendum date. I'm really concerned that we're not going to get poll workers, that people will be really uncomfortable going to the polls. I know we're really pushing absentee ballots, and I think that's awesome. And I think that's it makes me feel better. But I just wanted to make us aware that I'm concerned. This surge, especially with people my age, talk about it all the time. So just be aware that we've got to be on the mark about ready to make a move. I know we've been waiting a long time for this vote and all, but I'm concerned that a vote would only be decided on people that are either super healthy and very comfortable with the AB process. So anyway, that's all I have.
Any other board member comments?
Holiday.
Okay.
Happy holidays to everybody, by the way.
Okay, no other board member comments or liaison reports, then let's move on to Lauren. Do we have any citizen comments?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is an update from our municipal historian, Henry Griggs. So I'd like to welcome Henry Griggs to the meeting.
Okay.
Here I Henry, yep, welcome. And I thought maybe just as a quick, tutorial for the public, kind of what does the town historian do? That might be helpful before you do your update.
Well, that's a great segue, because my opening is that it's a position established by the legislature in the late 1980s. A couple of sort of vaguely defined jobs are to promote awareness of the historical record and to make sure that important events in the town are documented. And I think the second part of that is well handled by outlets like The Source and numerous websites, Facebook. So I've taken a personal interpretation focused on two words, and that would be collaboration and documentation. And it was almost by accident that I became an informal liaison for history-minded groups in the wider community, partly because I have served on the boards of the library, of the Deacon John Grave Foundation, the Charlotte Oliver's Memorial Archives, and on a statewide group called Preservation Connecticut, formerly the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. So that put me in a good position to find ways to eliminate unnecessary friction between local groups, but also to bring lessons from the statewide group to bear here. And for example, I was in a position to assist in the exhibition on World War I that the Historical Society and the Archives did together a couple of years back. As I said, documentation of the historic structures has been another big activity. And I worked with an architectural historian by the name of Todd Bryant in preparation first of the pre-demolition report of the Hall building, which sadly had to come down to make room for the library expansion, but also on a historic resources inventory of the 23 buildings in our downtown commercial block. And those documents are available on the library's website. I think it's the section called About Us. I'm currently working with the Historical Society to link their existing walking tour of the Green with a new walking tour based on the Todd Bryant inventory of downtown. So this could potentially help create that link between the two areas that we've been talking about in every other meeting for the last few years. And we're also looking at an event this spring to announce that linkage of the two walking tours and promote awareness of it. Looking down the road, I would like to explore, and I've mentioned this to a couple of you over the past couple of years, a much broader historic resources inventory of perhaps 100, 125 structures in town, location to be determined. They don't have to be contiguous. But Madison's status as a certified local government means that the entire cost of that survey, which would be tens of thousands of dollars, could be reimbursed fully by Hartford. So collaboration, documentation, those are the bywords of my work, and I am pleased and honored to continue in that spirit. Thank you. And no, I did not get the job because I know more about history than anybody else. There are at least 10 people who could have done the job, but they said, Henry, you'd be more suited for whatever reason. So I have learned a lot, but I don't pretend to be the expert. I know who they are, though.
You have a fair amount of passion, Henry. You're selling yourself short.
Well, I do love old stuff, probably born in the wrong century. And, before any of this happened, I bought a 18th century house on Warpus Road. And you have to have love in your heart to do that, because the creaks and the cracks and the leaks and everything else. I mean, how many of you worry about the repointing of your chimney stack very often? That's something we do when the mortar is made out of mud. In any event, I appreciate that comment, and I love it.
Well, a question I have, Henry, is just for, we've talked, I know, about trying to get this full inventory, right, of the entire town, of the historic structures, which is, I think, something I would advocate we should move forward on, so that we have an actual count of all the buildings. And when you say historic, what is the benchmark for being historic? Like, if you do this inventory, what's the year? How old does it have to be before it qualifies as historic?
The inventory is done to document all of the buildings, no matter what their age. So for in the downtown block, for example, we have brand new buildings, more or less, that are part of it. But you have a standard form with a high quality photograph. All these reports are done according to the standards set by the Secretary of the Interior, whose department is in charge of parks and preservation for the nation. So it's not so much a matter of how old it is, but just to get the information down somewhere in a standard high quality format prepared by a professional using, public documents and so on. When Todd did the report on downtown, he really only needed to go into 2 buildings. It's mostly done from the outside and with public records. We did go upstairs in the Monroe building because he felt that if it still had the original Masonic Hall upstairs, which it does, that might qualify it for the State Register of Historic Places. And in the case of the post office, he went inside to look at that great mural of gathering seaweed, and his estimation was that could be on the National Register of Historic Places. Wonderful honorific. It doesn't get you much, and the problem is it costs money to do it, except, for example, in the case of this Hartford reimbursement of the historic resource inventory. And it would probably be about 100, maybe to 125 structures. They have found that that's a big enough chunk to make a difference, but not so large as to completely overwhelm the consultants who are preparing it. So eventually, we could do both, the post road from end to end, or everything below the post road, or selected houses further out. Up Opening Hill Road or Summer Hill Road. Anything Hill Road is typically got a few old houses on it.
And is this because I know the Historical Society also does its historic plaque program, where they do extensive research on homes. Our home has a plaque. And so is there any crossover between something that would be listed, officially by the town versus like the Historical Society and what they?
Yeah, where you have the plaque, that feeds right into the historic resources inventory. It's doing the work that, the consultant might have to do by digging through records. They're separate things. There's yet another sort of inventory. The State Register of Historic Places actually covers about 300 buildings in Madison. Maybe it's 200. And I didn't even know it about my own house because the records were so poorly organized up in Hartford. But after the superstorm Sandy, some of that federal money came in to do it, to digitize all those records for the 4 coastal counties. So we have a bunch of houses that are eligible for tax credits, and I don't think everybody is aware of it who owns those houses. So that would be another kind of outreach we could do to sort of build awareness of the historic nature of these buildings. But the plaque program is very much in depth. They get in, they visit the house, as you may know.
Mhm.
I got some great advice from the fellow who did my house. We got a plaque some years back because I had a pipe that kept freezing in the knee wall, and his advice as a historical architectural expert was put a lamp in there with a 100-watt bulb and turn it on when it's cold. So
Yeah.
that's some very good practical advice from him, and by golly, it worked great. So, but the placking thing is far more in depth. Gets into the history of the ownership and any uses it might have had, any changes over the years. The resources inventory more or less takes a picture of the front and then puts a history together based on public records.
Okay.
Henry,
And
I'd
so-
like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Is there any way town government could be of greater assistance to some of our local organizations like the Historical Society or the Everett's Archives? Is there anything we could be doing to help them with their mission?
Yeah, well, I think that, to weave this larger inventory idea into the future budgets would be a big help, because that's just you've got a record right there of all these buildings. I'm trying to think. The big change was achieving certified local government status, which then qualified the town for all sorts of benefits that it didn't obtain before. So, but I'll think about that. If anything comes to mind, or I'll ask other people in my informal liaison role, what could the town be doing? We don't want to just say, well, give us money, because it has to go to a thing that's everybody agrees is of value. But perhaps looking at this larger inventory for a year or two down the road might be a big help. Although my friend George Nowotny Jr. joked that the inventory that was put together in downtown will certainly help the future developers to turn them into condos. But he's got rather more wit, I think, that man.
Well, but to that point, I think one of the things that other communities have is they have more of a historic committee or commission to talk about preservation in the community. That's more of an activist type of committee that the Board of Selectmen, I think we might want to consider establishing here in town. So that creates a process to protect those historic structures in town. Other towns have this, where they might give recommendations, whether it's zoning or, I don't know, permitting processes or whatever, to ensure that we are at least, making efforts to preserve buildings that we want to save and keep, part of our community.
Right. You get to bigger communities. I know Todd is from Norwalk, and they have an office of historic preservation. And you get to some of the bigger, wealthier towns in Fairfield and certainly major cities, they have an office of historic preservation. And I think Madison quite needs that at this point, as long as we've got volunteers who are willing to do the work. The biggest way to preserve historic structures, the strongest protections come from a local historic district, where people opt in and then they agree not to make big changes. It's sort of like a super ACA effect. So that's something that the owners, the homeowners, and the historical society typically would have to organize on their own. But we could look at that too. I certainly put it this way: we get along pretty well as we're doing, but the opportunity to invite more assistance, help, cooperation, et cetera, from the town is certainly a good one.
And I think it's really just, as development continues, we just need to be mindful that, that there are downsides to that too, as well as, trying to, lose some of the buildings and structures in town that we want to preserve. So,
yes, my friends at Preservation Connecticut have identified a demolition pandemic, because with this pressure on real estate, so many buildings that were perfectly fine turn out to be utterly unsuitable for the new owner, and for any number of reasons, complicated ones at that. And I've been involved with the demolition of a building where we just didn't have any other option. So I've started to empathize more. You know, in my old age, I've learned that sometimes a tree has to come down. You know? So what do? You plant 3 more. But perhaps through public awareness, if people knew, for example, that their house is already listed on the state register of historic places and that they might get help, for example, in repainting. We did a little Zoom through the library on a homeowners program, and I know of at least one homeowner whose house is in the Madison Green Historic District, and she's getting a pretty major chunk of her repaint subsidized by the state. So if you know that's available, then maybe people will think, well, maybe it's not so hard to maintain this if I can pull all these levers and get all the help that's available, especially on the tax credit front. But you know, if maybe more formal relationship between the municipal historian and the Board of Selectmen, you know, regular reports might be a good thing, because this, I think, was the first time I've spoken to this group since the last time I was appointed, except as a, you know, a library thing. So,
Henry, Noreen Kokaruda here, may I ask
Yeah.
a question? Thank you for this. This is excellent. You know, we all hear, a lot of us know about the plaques and what homeowners have put into really inventorying their house. How much has been done with downtown, with buildings? Are there buildings that really somewhere along the line, they really have been taken a look at? There's been a really good inventory of them, or does that need to be done?
yeah, well, we've got the 23 buildings in Todd Bryant's report, but I think other than that, it's pretty haphazard. And Connecticut is pretty laissez-faire as far as, you know, there are different layers of protection. And places like Hartford and New Haven have the highest, where any change has to go by some body like the city council. And it's a little more laissez-faire in Madison. So maybe an informal list of buildings that, you know, sometimes people put it as most endangered. We've got a couple of buildings on the postcard that are of historic significance, and they're just being let fall to pieces. We've seen that too often. My goal would be not to try to intervene at the end with, you know, stopping the demolition, but to get to the homeowner before and say, you've got a historic building, you could get help in the maintenance and upkeep, and that would make it more valuable for you to keep it as it is. I'm more of a carrots kind of guy.
Well, you know, I totally agree. We don't hear much about these buildings until somebody else buys them, and there's conversation about great change or even demolition. But I was just wondering if we could do more. You know, we're all so proud of our downtown. It's a unique little place, and I just wonder if we're protecting that area. If we could be doing more with just having more information on it, and really having it beyond an inventory, really knowing what one of these buildings is or was.
Well, I may be, you know, deliberately heading toward low-hanging fruit, because to get to the local historic district, you have to have buy-in from a critical mass of the owners. And typically 1 or 2 people will say, well, you ain't going to tell me what I can or cannot do with my house in the future. And that tends to spread like wildfire. So
it can be very, very controversial. We had it on the house I just left. I was in the historic district, but it was pretty amazing that right next door to me, they did not want to be. The street was really chopped up, and it does get controversial. But beyond
Well, we had
being
the general house too, Noreen. I mean, that was that whole conversation downtown, right? I mean, that was
Right.
very controversial relative to the history and all of that. So I hear what you're saying.
And what we do is we wait until somebody finally wants to do something with it. And instead of being proactive and getting the information out there ahead of time. I'm always amazed. I agree with what Henry said. I'm always amazed people, you know, Monday morning quarterback come running in when someone, you know, you drive by some of these buildings for 30 years and they're in such disrepair, and somebody has to buy it and everybody's upset about it. Maybe if we could find a way to get more information out early on some of the things Henry mentioned today that are out there. But I just think any opportunity, I think when you're talking downtown, it's quite different than a regular homeowner wanting to get that plaque on their house.
yeah, well, this has been stimulated some thoughts. So I would volunteer to come up with some kind of suggestions, the next month or two that might take us a few baby steps toward this, more proactive outreach on historic buildings that look like they need to be saved or headed that way. Again, you have to be very delicate, and we don't have what you have in Massachusetts or parts of New York, where just heavy-handed regulation. Connecticut's pretty free compared to other places. I always point to Nantucket, where you can paint your house one of 5 colors. I don't think that would fly in this state.
No, I don't think so.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so I'll
but
take that. I'm going to give you guys a little a suggestion, say in 60 days, a memo that, things we might pursue to be more proactive.
I think also, just to get back to your comment about carrot versus stick, right? I think the carrot, having an outreach effort and leveraging, we have the downtown list, obviously, we know how to approach those property owners, but going through maybe partnering with the Historical Society to go through, I don't even know how many plaques do they have. What if there was just an educational outreach to people with plaques on their houses, to talk about, I have a plaque, but I don't know if I'm eligible for any help. It would have be great to get some help when you're trying to, weatherize and paint and do some things. And I think a lot of homeowners end up forgoing the historical piece because it's just so expensive, so they opt to, our house has been renovated a lot, interior wise, but so I think just that educational piece, that would be great, just keeping that food for thought. And then maybe we can have an outreach effort to educate.
I would be thrilled to be part of that.
Okay. All right. Well, if any other questions for Henry? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, and we look forward to having you back. Okay.
All right, Henry.
Thanks so much. See you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you. So next item on the agenda is the update on the town COVID response and test distribution plan. I'm going to invite Sam DeBura up, and I know he's a very busy guy because we just announced another distribution, but I just thought it would be helpful to talk to the board. I know you've been kind of kept in the loop a little bit about the plan, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about what happened last week, and how we're trying to make this a better process this week. I know there was some frustration in the public about the sign-up process. And so I'll let Sam talk a little bit about, I think basically what happened when we launched the sign-up process, which we thought was a better way to go. I understand it's difficult for people who were challenged with technology, but we also made sure that we had a place for them to go to. And a lot of those, as particularly more seniors, have had the opportunity to get test kits. But welcome, Sam. But I think that I know that there was, we made the decision, we wanted to have people have time slots because it made so you didn't have to sit in line for 2 hours to pick your test kit up, which a lot of communities did. And so there was a little bit of an intensity at 9 o'clock when we opened up the registration, and frustration. But I just thought Sam could talk a little bit about why you maybe didn't get an immediate confirmation, and why, I had a lot of questions about, well, you announced at 11 that slots were full, but I jumped on at 9:15 and I didn't get a slot. So maybe Sam just kind of walk through some of that, but I do want to also highlight that I think you did an amazing job. It was a team effort, and getting these kits out. Once people did get a time slot, the process went really well. I also want to say thank you to Bruce, and Al and Scott, who all, volunteered last week. And I know Bruce and Scott both did a lot of time at the gate interacting with the public. So you probably, as well as I did. So we all know kind of, feedback that we received from the public. So mostly good, thanks to Sam and his organizational efforts on getting the tests out. So with that, I'll turn it over.
You have to thank Kathy too, Kathy DeBura.
Oh, Kathy, yeah, and Sam's
Right?
wife. Just
Come
I don't
on
think a lot
now.
of people realize
Right.
that it was a full family effort by the DeBura family.
That's
and
right.
She was amazing at the gate. And so this was really a team effort. And so I will turn it over to Sam. Maybe if you could just talk a little bit about why there were some glitches the first time and how we've tried to fix that problem the second time.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. So the first time, and it actually Guilford experienced the same problem. There was a glitch in the software when people picked the time slot, it didn't reserve the time slot. So if 50 people picked that time slot at one time, all those 50 people had that time slot. And then once they submitted it, it allowed an overbooking for that time slot. We had some time slots that were well over double booked. So unfortunately, we had to go through, and then we went on a first come, first served basis for those time slots. Actually, what happened was we got the system shut down about 9:26, 9:27, and we weren't accepting any more reservations after that. So on some of the later time slots on the Wednesday, there was some openings, so people were offered different time slots. And if they made it, fine. If they didn't, there was about 70 people that didn't show up to pick up their kids. Why that is, I have no idea. But
We also had people showing up on the wrong day, Sam, right?
yes, yep. So we fixed the system for this new rollout. So they said it might allow a couple extra signups, but not double booking like we did before. I did send out a notification yesterday to all the people that were unsuccessful in registering the last time. And right now we have so there was 395 of those that didn't have a duplicate address, and 320 of those have responded back, and they should have received the confirmation.
Pretty impressive.
So at 9 o'clock, it's going to open up to the rest of the public.
How many more
So-
slots are available for the
So
public?
there should be 305. So tomorrow we're going to give out a total of 700 kits, and these kits have 2 tests in them, so they're only going to get 1 kit. The other kits only had 1 test in them, so there was 2 test kits, and then we put 4 masks in each bag. And then I have to thank the building and grounds crew. They did a tremendous job setting this up, and really the whole success of the rollout and how smooth it went was due to their work and effort of bagging everything up and setting up the surf club. It went fairly smooth. We did have a few little minor glitches, and then made adjustments for Wednesday. And then I think Wednesday it went fairly smooth, even in the rain. So, and thanks to all those people that stood out in the rain for the 7 hours.
Yeah, and I will just comment that I think this next round, we are probably going to have more cars than we had per hour before, right? Because we're trying to condense a little bit. And we do have a little bit of a new traffic pattern because of the snow at the surf club. And obviously we also the deterioration of the lot, with the rain. They're doing kind of a new traffic pattern that would be all on pavement. So it may be a little slower this time, but I don't think it's going to be anything different. I think if people stick to their time slot, it should go smoothly.
Slower but colder, I think, right? It's going to be chilly.
Yeah. Well, that was the other thing, is having shelter for the guys who are having to stand and hand things out. But sorry, I'll turn it back to Sam.
Sam, may I just mention, I know in the beginning, and we all heard it, I saw it on Facebook, and I know a couple letters went out about, the 9 o'clock glitch and all, but that turned around so quickly. And overall, we've heard such good things about the job you all did. Great teamwork. It was, and even yesterday when Peggy sent the notice out, all great responses. At least that's what I saw.
Yeah, I mean, so I was sitting there watching the system when it was at the rollout of it, and it was amazing how fast, it was ticking up. It was, literally in about 20 minutes, almost all the spots were full. And we had extra people booked. So, happy that we got more kits to accommodate those people that we got turned down the last time. And I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Sounds like the federal government is going to mail out kits to everybody if they want them.
Sam,
Well, we'll
Sam,
see.
are you hearing from the state? Are you or Peggy hearing from the state about more test kits coming and kind of what number we can expect and any more information?
I haven't heard anything since the last distribution.
So were these a surprise, Sam? The ones that just showed up?
Yes, these were, yes.
Like a bonus?
We
Nice.
weren't expecting them. They just said, here, come pick up some more test kits.
Yeah.
And,
Like that.
you know, and it's always at the last minute, you know, so.
Of course.
Well, and that's where I just want to highlight that, you know, this was kind of dropped on the town during a week where we had a lot of staff out due to COVID or because it was the holiday week. And so, you know, people did triple time really to get, you know, figuring out the distribution. How do we get people? That's why originally we announced a drive-through, because we were told get these in the hands of the people before New Year's. So there was no way to do a sign up. You know, we couldn't pull it together in time and we wanted to get them out the door. And then when we didn't get the shipment, fortunately, that gave us a little bit of time to work on the sign up system. And Sam worked closely with the folks at Guilford, and we have that software that we had purchased last year, the Ochi. And so they found out that there was a capability there to do this, run this process through that. So, and, you know, so he spent a lot of time talking to the Guilford people and then the software developer, and that's kind of how this all came together very quickly over a holiday weekend. So,
Becoming a tech expert over the holiday weekend. Lucky you, Sam.
Yeah.
Ay.
So now I'm kind of waiting for the next wave of registrations.
Yeah, I know. 9 o'clock is approaching. I'll see the emails coming in soon.
Just one more thing. It's not just
Can I
the registration. Sam, could you talk a little bit about, it was in the letter about those who don't use technology, the seniors, that they can call the senior center? Or,
Yeah, so I think Austin communicated out. We did bring down some kits to Austin, and he actually put some kits together and delivered them to a lot of people. You know, they had a delivery last Thursday before the snowstorm. So they can. I don't know how many kits are left down there, but they could call the senior center if they need them and see. You know, if out of this did reserve some for our first responders. We're getting actually a lot of uptick in COVID cases between fire personnel, police personnel, and the ambulance. So we need to have those kits to test so we can get them back to work in a timely fashion. And then the other thing, one of the other problems, the biggest problem was people either made a little typo in their email address if they didn't get a communication back. We still got a couple this time where they put down the wrong email address. They might have put down their work email address. So we had a lot of requests that they didn't get communicated, even though they were confirmed. And a lot of it was a wrong email address. And the address box, when you register, when you start typing in your address, there's a pop-up box below it, and you should pick the address that corresponds with yours. There was a couple, then they put it Madison, New Jersey, so they didn't get validated, unfortunately. So you have to be careful that there is same addresses in other states. You know, there's Madison's in quite a few states. So just be careful when you click on that box that you confirm your address. Those are the two main reasons why people didn't get validated.
Sam, with this new shipment, how large was it? The shipment of tests, this last one?
So we got 11 boxes of 90, so 990.
Okay, about 1,000. Now, did senior services and used social services get any of that at all?
So we did reserve some for them. They haven't been distributed yet, but they still have some of the other distribution that we have.
You know, people are pushing for, I called yesterday to get an appointment at Goose Lane, and the earliest one was February 23rd. I mean, it's really way out there.
And really, you know, all the municipalities are calling for the state to open up more mass test sites, and I don't know why they're not doing it. I mean, that's really the answer. I mean, these, you know, this is a nice effort, but it's really not addressing the problem.
I
Well,
think this is more of a, you know, if you're concerned, you can take an at-home test, you know, to, you know, so that you're not going out in the public if you think you have symptoms. It doesn't, you know, satisfy travel requirements, job requirements, you know, medical procedures, and we have been, and we actually had a call with Hammonasset people with Deep to talk about, you know, and also reached out to community health, which had ran the test center at Hammonasset last year, just to see how can we help advocate. So we are doing that to try to get more testing resources. I know they did open Old Saybrook back up to a no appointment necessary, but you have to wait in line, you know. So it is a little frustrating. These at least offer peace of mind, you know, for people, or if you have a kid that's got the sniffles and you're on the fence about what to do, it gives you peace of mind, at least to know. And we did go through extensively the allotment, Noreen, and we're always, you know, estimating how many we hold aside for these different groups. We also took some for town as well, because we were concerned, like, look, we have a snowstorm. You don't want to have your public works crew out because of COVID, or not wanting to come in because they might think they have COVID. So we've made sure that the town has enough test kits to kind of get us through our staffing crunch right now also.
Well, I think you've done all that thinking and working together. I think you've done the best you can do here, and I think it's turned out pretty well so far. You know, my son tried to take a family trip, took the test at Yale on a Friday. He was flying out Sunday, and even if you get the test on time, they couldn't get the results done on time. The results came in an hour after his flight left. He never was able to leave, and couldn't use the test the next day because to travel, it has to be within 2 days. So it's way beyond Madison. It's kind of a mess out there with the testing.
I'm the opposite, actually. I had a PCR test done at Quest and got it back almost immediately. It was very well run.
Well, the Yale is saying up to 72 hours, 2 to 3 days, up to 72 hours. My son got his back in 52 hours.
Wow. Yeah, they said the same thing for us, but we got ours back in probably a day and a half. It was
Maybe Quest is the place to go. I don't know. Everybody's on it. We're waiting for the holiday rush to be over, and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it's going to be continued. You know, we just can do what we do here, and, you know, hopefully get through the surge, which they're saying should be kind of peaking soon for our state.
Is it too early to ask about the mask distribution that may be taking place?
No, we actually, what we've decided to do, rather than having some sort of drive-through, you know, mass distribution again, we think that we're going to be setting up locations throughout town where you can just go during open hours, because I think the demand is very different for that versus the test kits. People, it's a like nice to have some new masks. And so I'm hoping we can announce that later today, where you can go to different locations like the library or town hall or the senior center, and just at your leisure go in and pick up to a certain number of masks. So we're kind of working that out, so we don't have this crunch, and that you don't, you know, and you don't have to show ID, and you don't have to, you know, but we would monitor that, you know, to make sure that people aren't coming in. But we did get a very large shipment in, so you know, so we should have enough to keep, you know, people supplied who really are concerned and want those N95 masks.
Well, Peggy, I want to echo Noreen's applause to both you and Sam and Trent and the health team. I think it's really been exceptionally organized and run. I know you guys lost a big part of your holiday, you know, over New Year's, and that was hard, and I get it. But we certainly, I think, as a town, rally together with you and appreciate all the hard work and effort, you know, from the facilities guys and public works guys to all the town employees that are coming together to really work on this on behalf of the town. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
one
very
other thing I want to point out is that, so if someone has COVID or they tested positive for COVID with the PCR test, they could test positive for 90 days with the PCR test. So a lot of workers, the way they're getting back to work is through these antigen tests, these rapid testing.
Yep.
So as long as they're tested negative with the rapids, they're letting them come back to work. So it's important for the essential workforce to have these kits available to them.
It's a pretty hot topic right now on social media. It seems like everybody's talking
I'm
about
sure
that.
it is. I'm sure it is. Good thing I don't do social media.
Well played.
Tim, as far as having staff come back, has the change in the quarantine from 10 to 5 days made a big difference? For you
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
That's significant.
Yep, it is.
And I think that, we've developed a policy that, we're evaluating every situation also. It's very different if it's somebody in your household, your family that is you're close contact with versus, somebody that was more through a meeting or more of a casual level of contact outside the home, because you're having that constant exposure risk, if they're in your household. So we're trying to be very vigilant and careful as much as we can when we evaluate, having somebody come back to work also. But we're able to keep the doors open and continue to deliver services. And I will say they did, both Building and Grounds and Public Works did a great job with the snowstorm. Despite all this, we were able to get full staff in. I know a lot of other times we're really short, and I know the state was short, but we were able to pretty much fully staff, correct, Sam, the response to the storm.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think anybody was out.
So we're very fortunate with that. Any other questions for Sam on this topic? No? Okay, well, thanks. Good luck. You've got 8 minutes and
Yeah, I know.
fingers crossed VOT got the glitches fixed.
The countdown begins.
And if they didn't fix it, we'll just go through the process we did last week. A confirmation will be coming eventually. So
Yep. Yeah, it may take some time, but
it might just
you'll
take
get
some
one.
time if the glitch is not fixed. So, but we're hopeful for
Patient,
this.
right?
Yes. Well, I keep telling people 5 minutes of stress to log on versus 2 hours sitting in your car waiting to get a test, not knowing if you're going to
There
get
you
a
go.
test.
There you go.
Perspective.
So the
Not to
good
mention
thing
free.
is, so last week, the software company actually went through all this stuff for me because they felt it was their issue. So this week it's on me. So I mean, they went through and did all the duplicates and the time slots and all that stuff, which took them, I think about 6 hours. So I'm grateful to that that they did that instead of me having to go through it. But this time it's on me. So hopefully it goes smooth.
It'll work. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, goodbye.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the risk manager in the amount of $9,500 to fund the general insurance line. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second. Okay, great. And I will turn it over to discussion. Lauren can explain the 9,500 has to do with cyber insurance. So.
Hi, sorry about that. So last year after the budget process, CRMA came to us and let us know that cyber insurance was going to be pulled out of the liability policy. And this was actually something that most major carriers did last year because of all of the cyber attacks happening for municipalities or people clicking on things and giving information and all the municipalities getting ransomware. So when that happened and we were past the budget cycle, we had to go out to quote a new policy, and we did that. And unfortunately, it did result in an increase. So that's what this special appropriation is going to cover. It's going to cover the difference of part of that cyber policy. Sorry. Sorry, my son is playing marbles right next to me. So that increase is just the cyber insurance, and you will see that built into the budget for next year. But that's what the 9,500 is for this current fiscal year.
And just so the board understands that, there are towns in Connecticut that have had to tap into this cyber insurance. So I think it's really a critical type of insurance that we need to continue to have and offer.
Definitely.
Yeah. So any other questions for Lauren on this? No? Okay. All in favor of approving the special appropriation request as read, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Great. Thank you, Lauren. Next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve the hiring of Laurel Hoynoski to the position of Assistant Town Clerk located within the Town Clerk's office. The position is non-union, rate of pay is grade 6, step 3, $26.17 per hour. The position is budgeted, not requiring an appropriation of funds. This position vacancy was created by a resignation. Wait a second.
Second.
Okay, great. All right, great. We have Paula Carabetta from HR here to talk about the position. As I said, this was already budgeted and we had a resignation, and this is filling a vacancy. Oh. You are muted, Paula.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is just filling the position of Kristen Panzo that was the assistant town clerk. She resigned, so we just brought on Laurel, and she'll be starting tomorrow as long as this is approved.
Okay, and they went through a full interviewing process and everything.
Correct.
Got applicants and that was done in December, and this was the candidate that was selected.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. All right, great. Thank you. So all in favor of approving the hiring as read, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next item on the, thank you, Paula. Next item on the agenda is just to follow on our previous discussion on ARPA funding objectives, just because that committee, I think, is now been appointed and wants to meet soon. And so I sent out to the board, I was kind of trying to recall, to be honest, some of the points that were discussed in our last meeting. We had, I think, a wide discussion, and part of that was just bringing you up to speed on how much money we had left and, what we'd already spent, expenditures we'd made. And the impression I got was there was this desire, I know Noreen had mentioned this as well as Bruce, about a kind of something that's transformational. This shouldn't just be routine things that we just chip away at with this funding. It should really have a lasting impact on the town. So I took a little stab at just rewording the guidelines, which you'll see in red. No pride of authorship, but just wanted to get your thoughts on, I don't know if to be honest, if we vote or we just kind of recommend this to the committee, as guidelines, and we can use this as our guidelines as well as we evaluate what they come back with. But wanted to put this out here so that we had some sort of structure for them to work from. And then I sent around yesterday, I think this, like I said, with the red is what's been changed.
Peggy, this is not in any order of priority. Is that correct?
No, I didn't do any kind of priority order.
Peggy, I hopefully would see this as really for this to be considered, or is this sort of a mandate to the committee?
I think that's what we decide. I think this should be like recommendations, but not requirements. So they, that this is the board of select, because ultimately this all comes back to us for approval. So I think it's important for them to have some guidelines, because they don't, want to come up with something totally different and then come back to us and then we're like, well, that's not what we wanted, or, so I don't think it has to be mandated. They might have a very strong view that there's something here that's missing that they feel strongly about. But I think it's important to give them some sort of, guidelines.
I thought this list looked good. I had one thing that sort of jumped out at me was we have a lot of not-for-profit and civic groups and stuff that do a lot in town. Where on this would they be considered if they come in with something? We talk about upgrading indoor, outdoor public facilities, and then we talk about, support for economic recovery. are we also talking where, I just am thinking all the different not-for-profits that do so much, if they come in with something, I would like to be able to at least consider it, as we let people come in and give us some ideas.
So I think that would fall under the assisting vulnerable populations adversely impacted by COVID. And that's where, we had talked at our last meeting about possibly setting up some sort of assistance fund. And that was back when this is from the previous presentation, but we talked about, here was an idea of they could set up these types of grant programs. And it seems like there was support from the board for the grant programs, but let them work out the details. Like, do they have one big grant program, or do they have it targeted to certain groups? We could change that bullet point, assisting vulnerable populations, or assisting, just say, nonprofits.
I would keep it.
Because a lot of it is their
I would keep
fundraising.
it more generic. They're coming back to us with recommendations and actions anyway, right? So we're still going to have to approve it.
Right.
So would we want not-for-profits instead of vulnerable populations? I think not-for-profits make it broader.
Oops. Okay, so I can't change it, but yeah, we can make this. Oh wait, how do I get it out of presentation mode? Let's see.
Or maybe say vulnerable populations and nonprofits or something.
I'm fine with that.
Wait, let me.
There's so much that not-for-profits do in our community that we don't have to do, thankfully. I just want to make sure we include them in this early stage, so they're not, we're not limited.
Wrong presentation, sorry.
Oh, and Noreen, I think it's an interesting point too, because it speaks to the collaboration that we can have with nonprofits
Right.
regardless. So I think it's a good add.
So just say assisting Madison.
Yeah. And other vulnerable populations or something.
Should we say nonprofits and civic groups?
Yeah. I would just say nonprofits, civic groups, and other.
Okay.
And one other, just a little thing, if you're putting Madison not-for-profits, should we be open to the fact that there might be not-for-profit that's not in Madison, but serves Madison?
Assisting, nonprofits.
Local or area, or I don't.
Local nonprofits serving Madison. How about we just rephrase it?
Right.
Nonprofit section.
I don't think we should need to wordsmith it here, though. Like,
Yeah.
you could probably take
I think
this.
local is good, because that could
Okay.
arguably be something based in Guilford, but they do a lot of work in Madison or something. Okay. So everybody kind of good with this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that basically if we're in agreement, I don't think we have to vote. I can just give this to the committee, along with their charge. I think it's broad enough, but it gives them a little bit of, and then it helps them understand a little bit some of the other things the board has already voted on, I think, and how we kind of set priorities. So, okay, great. All right, let me stop the share there.
Is the staff member that we will work with, Stacy, in this? Because I wasn't on the board before, there's a little catch up I've got to do, and I just want to know who I should meet with.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to think. I think it's. Stacy is part of the approval. For the finance department managing the approval. I don't think we've designated who the key point person is. It's probably going to be Lauren, actually.
Yeah, we did put on the charge, Stacy and myself, and then
Okay.
I think with the intention of that, this will run like CIP, where if there is a departmental request from another department head, they would come to you and review that request with you as well, just like they do with CIP.
All right, that helps. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to approve the appointment of Dan Buckley to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for a term to expire January 1st, 2024.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, great. Any discussion? We're always grateful for volunteers who step up to serve on our committees.
And
All-
someone brand new to town, which is nice to see him jumping in with both feet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. This committee, I've gotten so many emails about the need for sidewalks, the need for changes in, traffic patterns, so this is going to be an important committee, I think, over the next year as we kind of work through just trying to make things more friendly to bicycle and pedestrians. So,
And looking at Mr. Buckley's resume, it sounds like he'll be a perfect fit for that as we move forward.
so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. All right, next item on the agenda, a motion to approve with regret, the resignations of Tom Berlin from Planning and Zoning Commission, James Madison from the Planning and Zoning Commission, Art Simmons from the Youth and Family Services Board, effective February 1st, 2022.
So moved.
So moved with, I'll second it with our thanks.
Yes, indeed, with our
All right, thank you very much for your dedicated service. And with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is motion. I do not have this in front of me.
Bruce he looks ready.
Go ahead.
I'll move $4,722.30.
That's a refund, right?
I'll
Refunds, right?
second that, Bruce.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, Lauren, do we have any citizens' comments?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. And with that now, just for the public's benefit, we are going to be moving into executive session to discuss the purchase and sale negotiations for Island Avenue School. And so with that, I would like to move that we move into executive session and we invite into that executive session Lauren Rhines, Stacy Nobitz, and then 3 attorneys from Merthyr Klein. I'm not sure who's all on, but I will invite them in. Jody Driscoll, Alfred Smith, and Carrie Olson. Can I get a second on that? Okay, I'll second it. Okay, all in favor of moving into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.